Can you go XL? I think so, yeah. I mean, do you have a cable? Because I could also do that. What's your best question? We need that. Yeah. He got himself. But everybody give Dave a big round of applause. How everybody doing?
Good.
Right on. Well, Ethan asked me to come to kind of talk about what I do with music and a little bit about my background. So my name is David Einmo. Started this project called Head Like a Kite, which really came out of my desire to try something sort of experimental, but also at the same time bring in some more, I guess, pop sensibilities to it. So making music that experimented, but also was accessible at the same time. And my background was more as a guitar player in various rock bands, did a lot of touring in Europe and throughout the United States. And then, as much as I enjoyed that, I really wanted the chance to sort of do my own thing, as I think a lot of creative people do. At some point, they want to do their own thing. So it started out as kind of this idea where I would go to the studio and I would bring in a lot of different friends to collaborate with. And so that kind of gave me more of a producer role. And so that's how the first album worked. And then once I was done with that album, I had to sort of figure out how to create that music live. And so put together a live band and then started touring. We did a bunch of touring around the United States, did some touring in Japan, and Guam, which was an interesting tour. Yeah, so anyway.
You guys know where Guam is?
It's on the way to Japan. It's a tiny, tiny little island that is in the Pacific Ocean. It's kind of near the Philippines. It's really all by itself in the middle of the ocean. But anyway, it was a really wonderful experience going there. And of course, the tour in Japan was really exciting. The tour in the United States has been exciting. But coming back to the music part, what I really loved about creating electronic music was that it was sort of an extension of the studio, where you spend time manipulating sounds in the studio and then figuring out a way to take those sounds and do something cool and different with them when you're performing live. And I was just talking about to Ethan, about one of my frustrations with electronic music is when you start getting all this gear with laptops, is that from typically when you'll see a performer that's doing electronic music, what you really see is this. And they're doing stuff back here, but they could be updating their Facebook page. We have no idea what exactly is happening. And I think a lot of times it's pretty boring just seeing somebody behind a computer. So what my goal was to take electronic music and to really put on a party so that it felt like it was New Year's Eve every single night. So a lot of our shows would involve costumes, would involve kind of bringing people from the audience up onto the stage and really make it this big festive event, as opposed to just some dude behind a table with a laptop. So what I wanted to do is I was going to show you kind of like how some of these songs are created. I think the way I do it is slightly different than maybe other electronic musicians, but I thought it might be kind of interesting to see typically how this stuff is created. And when I say I do it differently, one of the things I like to do, coming from more of a rock background originally, was I really like to incorporate the organic sounds of instruments. So what my goal was to create sounds using live drums, using live guitars, using live synthesizers, things that we hear maybe the word analog. So real sounds. Sounds like that fan, for example, or sounds like street sounds that are outside. Taking a lot of what people might refer to as ambient sounds that they're hearing outside, taking those sounds and then manipulating them in the studio. So by manipulating them, I mean cutting them up into patterns. For example, that fan, sample that fan, record that fan, and then start cutting it up, detuning the fan so that now that thing becomes a kick drum because I can lower the sound of it, can create a hi-hat, a snare, make all these different sounds out of it. So what I ended up doing was inviting different friends to come in and play live drums over the sounds, play live cello, as opposed to just using synthesizers, which I think a lot of electronic musicians tend to use more just electronic sounds. But I wanted to incorporate the sounds of the outdoors, incorporate the sounds of real instruments within the context of also electronic music. So first thing I thought I would just show you is, I'll go over to this. This is the laptop that typically used for live stuff. And I'll show you. So a lot of this stuff, the way it's set up is, I don't know, can you guys see this very well? Is that any better? Can you see it at all? Okay, well, so basically, you see all these different squares here. And what those are is short loops. And I would think you could compare loops to, say, like when your phone rings, you've got a ringtone, you've got something, it's a short little 10-second thing that's just basically keeps repeating. I mean, basically, that's what a loop is, right? So what I would do is I would record these sounds with my guitar, the traditional way a rock musician might do it, with an amplifier, microphones, and I would record that in the studio onto tape, and then take that sound and convert it onto my computer, and then I start cutting it up and creating all these little, basically squares. Those are all the loops, right? And so what I do then is take those loops and arrange them in such a way that then I create the song. So it's kind of a weird way when you think about it. Like most bands will go in and they'll just go to the studio and they'll all perform together at the same time. But what I was doing was, because I'm only one person, is I would go and I would lay down the guitar part, and then I'd create a bass part, and then I'd play some drums, and I'd cut all those up into these loops, and then pick certain parts of them that I thought that were interesting, and then create a song that way. And so what I was just going to show you is, I'll try not to block it too much as I'm doing this. It's sit like this. If you guys, can you still see it? Like I'm down like this? Okay.
And I see some of you guys taking notes, which is good, because remember tonight we're going to answer a reflection question on the discussion board about what Dave's talking about. So if you said something about loops, maybe write that down so you remember stuff tonight when you are reflecting.
Yeah, and Ethan brings up loops. I mean, loops are kind of like the backbone of hip-hop and electronic music. It's all kind of based around picking a loop that really is inspiring and interesting and doing something cool with it. So what I'm going to do, I think the easiest way to explain this would be like, I'm going to play a remix. And it's actually a song that Ethan and I performed together at Bumbershoot and various other places. It is a song by the Rolling Stones called Gimme Shelter. And what we did is, I'll play the original, and then what I'm going to do is show you loops that I cut up to create what was a remix of that song. It sounds completely different, and that's what Head Like a Kite performed, was this remix version. So here, real quick, here is the original version by the Rolling Stones. I'll just play like 30 seconds so you kind of get the vibe of it. And let's see here. I think I'm going to play it.
Because
looks like this sample actually. So here's another problem with electronic music. Sometimes samples get corrupted, so that's what's happening with this song. That's okay. I will just play you the Head Like a Kite version. I'm going to play from the beginning.